أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum dear students. I hope all of you and your loved ones should be doing fine and you will be in good health. I hope you have been going through the lectures properly and regularly. So in our today's lecture we will talk about the successes of Vedant and we will try to discuss the two strategic arms limitation treaties, Salt 1 and Salt 2, as a success story of the period of Vedant in international relations. In our previous lecture, we had discussed the background of armaments which was going on, which was quite hot before the start of phase of Detan, and how Detan helped to pacify that arms race. We had brief discussion about all those things, and in our today's lecture we will talk about the key aspects of Vedant and the two theories of Salt 1 and Salt 2, treaties of Salt 1 and Salt 2, and we will also try to discuss the various criticism which has been made on these two strategic arms limitation treaties. So, without wasting further time, we will talk about the brief introduction of Salt 1 first, and then we will talk about some of the key aspects of this theory, and then we will discuss the criticism which is there on this very treaty. During the late 60s, the United States got to know that the Soviet Union had been involved in a massive buildup of intercontinental ballistic missiles that was designed to reach parity with the United States of America, as we have already discussed that in our previous discussions that US had superiority in terms of non-conventional weapons such as the nuclear weapons, and it was the Soviet Union who tried to reach at par with the Americans. So during the late 60s, the United States got to know that the Soviet Union was involved in building massive intercontinental ballistic missiles. And then in January 1967, President Lyndon Johnson, which was the then President of the United States of America, announced that the Soviet Union had begun to construct a limited anti-ballistic missiles defense system around Moscow. So this development of an anti-ballistic missile system could allow one side to launch a first strike and then prevent the other from retaliating by shooting down incoming missiles. So there are two aspects of this ABM build-up. One is the defensive and the other is offensive. So the United States leadership, along with the president, they got very much concerned about the build-up of ABM, ICBMs by the Soviet Union in the late 60s. So keeping in view all these developments, Lyndon Johnson called for strategic arms limitation talks. So, keeping all these factors in mind, the United States President took an initiative to initiate the strategic arms limitation talks, and in 1967, he and his Soviet counterpart Alexei Kosygin met at Glasgow State College in New Jersey. And Johnson there made a statement that they must gain control of the ABM brace, and the Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara argued that the more each reached to the other's escalation, the more they had chosen an insane road to follow. So while abolition of nuclear weapons would be quite impossible, so limiting the development of both offensive and defensive strategic systems would stabilize Soviet Americans' relations. So these keeping in view these apprehensions of insane road to follow, which was the unending race of armament, the both states took an initiative to start a dialogue to limiting the arms race, or the limiting the stockpile of nuclear weapons, as abolishing the stockpile of nuclear weapons was something which was not possible. And after that, Richard Nixon, who was the successor of Lyndon Johnson, also believed in SALT process, and on November 17, 1969, the formal talks about SALT began in Helsinki, Finland. And over the next 2.5 years, the two sides haggled over whether or not each nation should complete their plans for anti-ballistic missiles, verification of the treaty, and US concern that the Soviets continued to build more submarine launched ballistic missiles. Nixon and Soviet General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev signed the ABM Treaty and Interim SALT Agreement on May 26, 1972 in Moscow. So that's how the SALT 1 and the Interim SALT 1 and the ABM Treaty was signed in 1972 in Moscow. It was for the first time during the Cold War the United States and the Soviet Union had agreed to limit the number of nuclear missiles and their in their arsenals. SALT 1 is considered the crowning achievement of the Nixon-Kissinger strategy of Dayton. The ABM Treaty limited strategic missiles defense to 200 interceptors each, and allowed each side to construct two missile defense sites, one to protect the national capital, the other to protect the ICBM field. So, and also the basic, when we talk about the basic principles of agreement that created rules for the conduct of nuclear war, committed both sides to promote peaceful coexistence. So now we will talk about these basic principles of the agreement. The spirit of cooperation was achieved by SALT 1 and it was followed by the visits by the American president to Moscow in 1972 and 1974. The Russian counterpart, Brezhnev, also the American counter, the Brezhnev, who was the then leader of the Soviet Union, also paid a visit to Washington in 1973 in that very regard of strategic arms limitation talks. So we can simply say that, as we just mentioned, that SALT 1 was a landmark agreement as it institutionalized arms control and committed both nations to formal rules and goals. So now we will talk about the criticism which is placed on the theory of SALT 1 by the analysts from all around the world. Some criticize it for not going far enough. This limitation, strategic arms limitation talks, has been criticized by a few as it couldn't go long or far enough to to convincingly produce the stockpiles, as after the Detente period, this race of armaments further got momentum again, and all these efforts which were made earlier, they became futile. So the criticism which is placed against Salt one of those aspects of criticism are like that this Salt one only regulated nuclear war. So this strategic arms talks were only limited to the unconventional weaponry, such as the nuclear weapons, not the conventional warfare. And this and these talks focused on limitation of the stockpiles, the strategic stockpiles by both the uh, adversaries of Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union, but it didn't try to seek disarmament thoroughly. And it only allowed both the Soviet Union and the United States to maintain MIRVs. And the last point, which is made in terms of criticism over the SALT 1 treaty, is that it was highly destructive. As we saw that after the closure of the period of detente, the resumption of armament was quite intense. Okay, now we will move further, and we will try to talk about SALT 2. The negotiations for the second round of SALT began in late 1972. Since SALT 1 didn't prevent each side from enlarging their forces through the development of multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicles onto their ICBMs and LBMS. SALT 2 initially focused on limiting and then ultimately reducing the number of MIRVs. Negotiations also sought to prevent both sides from making qualitative breakthroughs that would again destabilize the strategic relationship. The negotiations spanned the Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter administrations, and at the November 1974 Vladivostok summit, Ford and Brezhnev agreed on the basic framework of SALT II agreement. This included a 2400 limit on the strategic nuclear delivery vehicles such as ICBMs, LBMs, and heavy bombers for each side, and 1320 limit on MIRV systems, a ban on new land-based ICBM launchers, and limit on deployment of new types of strategic offensive arms. So these were the different achievements that were achieved during the second round of SALT, and that put a limitation on the non-conventional weaponries, as we mentioned the number of ICBMs and the SLBMs and MIRV system. Even after the Vladivostok agreements, the two nations couldn't resolve the two other outstanding issues from SALT 1. Those were the number of strategic bombers and the total number of warheads in each nation's arsenal. The first was complicated by the Soviet backfire bomber, which the US negotiators believed could reach the United States, but which the Soviets refused to include in the SALT negotiation. Meanwhile, the Soviets attempted unsuccessfully to limit American deployment of air-launched cruise missiles. Verification also divided the two nations, but eventually they agreed on using national technical means, including the collection of electronic signals known as telemetry, and the use of photo reconnaissance satellites. And eventually on June 17, 1979, Carter and Brezhnev signed the SALT II treaty in Vienna. SALT II limited the total of both nations' nuclear arsenals to 2,250 delivery vehicles and placed a variety of other restrictions on deployed strategic nuclear forces, including MIRVs. Now we will talk about the criticism which is placed against this theory of SALT or the second round of SALT. It has been faced criticism from inside the United States of America. Many believed it only limited the US power, and it couldn't put like bar on the Soviet Union's mm, mm, power. And uh, also people from the United States, they believe that this process of the second round of the strategic arms limitation talks enabled the United States of sorry, the Soviet Union to catch up with the United States. So the disparity which was there in terms of non-conventional weapons between the Soviet Union and the United States was covered by the Soviet Union in the guise of the strategic arms limitation talks, and the Soviets took the benefit to over the United States through these talks, and they enhanced their stockpile of strategic non-conventional arms, and reached parity with the United States of America in that particular domain. So this is all about our today's discussion. We discussed the strategic arms limitation treaties of SALT 1, SALT 1 and SALT 2 as the success story of the phase of Detan, and how Detan helped to pacify the race of armaments which was going on between the Soviet Union and the United States of America in the 50s and 60s. Uh, it couldn't actually put a full stop on or it couldn't abolish the non-conventional uh, stockpiles of weapons possessed by the United States and the Soviet Union, but it helped to um, reduce this intensity of the nuclear race, and like they both the United States and the Soviet Union, they reached a consensus to have a limited stockpile of non-conventional weapons, and that is considered as one of the success stories of the process of Detan, and it eventually the threat of nuclear catastrophe which was there in the early year of 1960s, particularly in the shape of in the Cuban Missile Crisis, that fear was curtailed to some extent during the years of Vietnam, and that's how these two SALT 1 and SALT 2 treaties are the success stories of data. So that's all about our today's discussion, and if you have any queries about that, please feel free to write your queries to me, and I would be quite happy to address your questions. And again, I would advise all of you to keep on going through all these lectures thoroughly and carefully, and I would also share some reading materials with you, so you can go through that reading materials to comprehend these topics thoroughly. So wish you all the best. Stay safe and healthy, and see you next week inshallah for our upcoming lectures. Till then, Allah Hafiz.